The basic technique in Harai Uke, both opponents draw to Chudan position. Uchitachi steps forward into Jodan as Shitachi lowers the sword slightly. Extending through the Kisaki, Uchitachi steps in to cut men. Using the Shinogi, the sword is deflected, cut to the side, and then in one position, cutting to the head. Stepping back, coming back to Chudan position, and lowering the swords into Gedan. Step back into a ready position. In order for you to see the deflection on Harai Uke, the Shinogi is being used to actually deflect the sword as Uchitachi is moving inward. It comes directly off of Shitachi's shoulder. I step in, cutting to his head. His Shinogi is actually deflecting my sword because I'm moving in and creating an angle as I'm moving in, which automatically deflects just past his arm and shoulder. He continues to cut in one solid motion, stepping backward and returning to Chudan. In order to practice Harai Uke, in a dojo, you're going to exchange back and forth, switching Shitachi and Uchitachi technique. Harai Uke for Shitachi is not so much of a block as it is a single cut. As Uchitachi, that will be me in this case, closes the distance, all that Shitachi is really thinking about doing is making one single cut to my head. The deflection is a part of that cut. Hey! Harai Uke. Hey! Hey! Ukenagashi actually means to receive and flow. In Ukenagashi, the sidestep motion in the receiving of the sword is imperative. As I step in and cut to men, Shimbabukuro Sensei steps to the side, receiving the sword, and then striking. A few of the finer points in Ukenagashi are the actual way that Shitachi receives and releases the sword of Uchitachi when he cuts. As I assume Chudan and Jodan, notice that the swords are actually crossing on the omote side, so actually they're to the right of each other. As I step forward into Jodan, and the sword comes slightly offline to invite me to attack. At this point, the omote side of Shitachi's sword is on the inside. And this is the part of the sword that he's going to use to receive my sword. As I cut, he brings the omote side up, and then as I cut, he releases on the ura side, the back side of the sword, and cuts to my head. And now Ukenagashi at normal speed. To practice Ukenagashi in a dojo with a partner, we can switch back and forth between Uchitachi and Shitachi, moving backward and forward, exchanging the technique. Ukenagashi. Eight! Eight! Kiri Otoshi is a more advanced form of what you learned when you were learning Harai, or sometimes it's known as Tsuriyage. In Kiri Otoshi, instead of receiving my sword, Uchitachi's sword, as Shitachi's sword is coming up, he receives it as he's cutting at the same time. So you'll notice it's his spirit that's actually blocking my sword now through the cut rather than the rising of his blade. We both draw the sword together. Uchitachi assumes Hasso no Kamae, lowering to the corner of the mouth. At this point, Shitachi has lowered his sword just to the side, from threatening my Seichusen to opening up, assuming that I have an opening to enter through. As I raise the sword and come in, this time you'll notice he's raising the sword at the same time. I'm coming from Hasso now rather than Jodan, so he has more time. So he's raising the sword at the same time as I'm raising my sword. As I step in to cut, he cuts at the exact same time and enters, cutting straight through. Stepping back to Chudan no Kamae, and Geidan. And now Kiri Otoshi at normal speed. Hey! To create a two-man drill in the dojo over and over to practice Kiri Otoshi, Uchitachi continues to cut from Hasso. Kiri Otoshi. Eight! Tsukidome is used by Shitachi keeping his kisaki on line with my throat. As I stab toward his suigetsu, the center of his solar plexus, his sword moves from the center to the side. We both go chudan. Notice the swords are crossing approximately neck high. As I thrust to his suigetsu, his hands move to his left hip, deflecting my sword, while the kisaki, the tip, stays on line and inserts to my throat. Tsukidome starts from chudan position. As Uchitachi thrusts to the solar plexus, Shitachi moves his hands to his left side, deflecting the sword and keeping the kisaki on line, stabbing to the throat. In order to practice Tsukidome in the dojo, Uchitachi continues to attack 3 times. 突き止め。やっ突き止め。